I know that Jesus says you're supposed to love your neighbor, but you can do it wrong. You can actually, by trying to love your neighbor, make things worse.
When Jesus said there are two great commandments, out of all those hundreds and hundreds of commandments, these are the big two. It's to love God and love your neighbor. But it's interesting that the ancient peoples would have understood those commands in a very different way than we do now. They had a much more nuanced understanding of it.
Because there's a whole body of knowledge that ancient people in this world had that has been lost. And we are going to, today in the podcast, give you the ancient wisdom. How do you actually love the neighbor effectively? Hey everybody, welcome to the Swedenborgian Life Podcast. My name is Curtis Childs. This is Dr. Jonathan Rose.
Hey Curtis.
Thanks for watching, everybody. This is going to be a great one. We're talking about the thing we forgot. The human race forgot the main thing.
Yeah.
We used to
know.
We used to have priorities. We used to have at least have some priorities about it. But now, like the main thing, and even what Jesus Christ, who's some people would say, including Swedenborg, that is God in the flesh, said this is the main thing, but we don't. It's a footnote to the pursuit. It's like there ain't no Harvard course about how to do this.
Not as far as I know.
Although they still haven't responded to my application there. So, so we're talking today about the true definition of neighborly love. Now, don't hang up your phone thing. That sounds boring. Like that's the thing we need to dig into the least. Neighborly love is just like a platitude. It's like a Hallmark card. It's like, but actually, there's a lot of. It's a really important thing to understand, and this will be my last preface before we start reading. It's to understand how to effectively distribute aid that matches the needs of people.
That's right. When I think back on the 20th century, you had AA was coming in there, Alcoholics Anonymous, and 12-step groups, and I think there was a wisdom coming of like, oh wait, there's a way of treating an active alcoholic that's actually enabling them to get worse. What you think is love is going in the opposite direction. It's making them worse. And what they need is tough love, or, different expressions like that, where you need to be hard, need to set boundaries, need to be tough. And so I think we're in an interesting time of kind of re-examining what is the wisest. So yes, there's one thing is just like, oh, I feel compassion, I feel sentiment, I feel for this person, I feel badly about what they're going through and all that. That's great. But how would you communicate that to that person in a way that would actually help them move forward in their lives?
Yeah.
And this is this lost. There used to be a lot more wisdom about that than there is now.
To study that with the vociferousness. What's that vociferous? The tenacity by which we pursue understanding the nature of the atom, or understanding the nature of biology or of chemistry. That this is also there's as much to find in there, and it's of the same or greater importance.
Could really impact society.
So this is what Swedenborg had to say about it. If anyone's not familiar, Emanuel Swedenborg, scientist, inventor, leading figure in Europe at 1700s, started to have what we would now call spiritual experiences, got to go and visit God and afterlife and everything, and so had some very direct firsthand experience with how things are supposed to be. And this is kind of going back to like the design for the universe.
And what's astounding about his experiences is that quite early on, he starts to interact with people who lived on this planet long ago and are still in this spiritual world.
Yes.
And so he's able to learn lost things. I mean, it's great. It's sort of a connector back across time to get wisdom that used to be there and bring it forward if at all possible.
That's right. Okay, so this is right directly from the spirits of ancient people. This is from his book, Secrets of Heaven, 6628. I have shown that theology of neighborly love was the theology of the ancient churches. that this theology united all the churches, and that it therefore created one religion out of many. The people of those religions, you see, acknowledged as members of the church everyone who lived a life of neighborly kindness. They called such people family, no matter how far they diverged otherwise on truth, the truth that people now identify with faith.
It is such a different... I have a friend, used to be a colleague on the faculty of Bernathen College, who talked about how different religion was in ancient times. And it really was this way, that you could see if somebody sort of respects the idea of the divine, the fact that one person's worshiping this person or somebody else is doing that. So it really didn't matter. If you were being a decent member of society, that's really what the core of the thing was. And now we can't even understand that, because it's like, well, wait, isn't that a completely different philosophy of reality? Does it matter? No, not really. I can see they're a good person.
Man, that's crazy. That right away, because right now it's the opposite, where you can, what religion are you on this? And that person, yeah, I can see they're a good person, but they're a different religion, and I'm this religion. Because why? What's the differentiator? Well, it's our rituals and our beliefs.
Yeah, exactly.
It used to be that is that person in the same church as you? Yeah, they are, because they're living a life of neighborly kindness. So that's the hallmark.
Which is pretty universal, I mean, it would feel like playing tennis with the net down to a lot of people now. Wait a second, what? You can't just say, people from all religions of the world who are decent people are like, we actually see that we're one. You can see that there was a much greater unity, and he doesn't say there was no differences. Yeah. There were big differences, but it was secondary to this idea of, oh, no, you're on the same team. We're on the neighborly love, neighborly kindness team.
Yeah. I can't stop thinking about tennis with the net down. That would be so easy. It was so stress-free. Like, it'll just bounce till it gets to you.
Right.
Okay, so you look around and you see who's living a life of neighborly love. Because not everybody does. Who's doing it? And then that person, I consider them in the church with me. We have different ideas, but that's secondary. It's not nothing. But the more important thing is, are you living that life of love? And you can have the same ideas as me and the same rituals. But if I look at your life and I see that you're not living a life of neighborly, I don't consider you part of my church.
Yeah. That is so interesting. It's very different.
It continues. As for religious truth, one individual would teach another, which they counted as an act of neighborly love. So you can share your faith. Okay.
Teaching, yeah.
What is more, no offense was taken if one individual did not yield to another's point of view. They knew that the more intent we are on what is good, the more truth we accept.
So they really had this priority on goodness, which in Swedenborg's vocabulary equals love. Love is the most important thing. That's what's going on between people. That's the most important thing. This sort of idea of, oh, well, this is my thought about the afterlife, or this is who I think God is. It's important, but it's secondary to the love thing.
And it's just an attitude. It's an attitude shift, because it's like it matters. People would try to teach each other, and it's considered good to try to teach someone. You say, look, I'm going to share what my doctrines, because it could be that certain doctrines are more closely match reality than others. I'm going to try to do that, and that's actually considered an act of neighborly love to try to give you these truths. Yeah. However, I'm not offended if you don't yield to my point of view.
So it's not thought control. It's not sort of everybody in lockstep.
Well, the stakes are different. I mean, nowadays you got a lot of people who think, unless you belong to this faith, you're in a huge trouble with your eternal destiny, or that what I have to do is try to make converts and I win or lose. So the stakes are different, and so if people believe that, then it makes sense that no, you can't just wait, come on, you got to listen to what I have to say. Whereas if you know this person's already in the church because they're already living a life of neighborly kindness, then it's like, yeah, I think I could improve your ideas, but stakes are different.
I'm not worried if you don't. Yeah, because I know that everybody just has their own mindset that comes out of the way that they're living their life, and so we may see things differently, but I still thought I'd share my point of view because this is where I've come to in the course of my life.
So they had all these different religions back in some. He doesn't specify the exact time period, but back in some time period,
yeah.
Had all these different religions.
Pre-Christian. Ancient generally is like, thousands of years ago.
They had a theology, which was one central teaching, which is the teaching of neighborly love. In that, if you're living a life in which you try to do good to others, then that's the most important thing. Like that's an idea in itself. Every church held that idea, and so all these different churches made one church. Okay.
Yeah, and the prioritization. It's never the case that all of these teachings are of equal value. Everybody, Swedenborg talks about this, everybody sort of sorts their, I'm picturing puzzle pieces or, I don't know, things on a table, and everybody stacks them differently. Everybody says, well, no, this is the most important one. This is peripheral. I don't care about that. This is, everybody does that in a different way.
You might be saying at home, well, I don't care. Why would I care about how these people do this? There's benefits to doing it that way. He continues, as this is what ancient churches were like, the people in them had depth. And as they had depth, they were wise. So you want to be wise. This is a component of that wisdom, is to understand that the ethics of your life are of paramount importance. I'm just right on the edge of my thesaurus here. People intent on doing good out of love and charity are in heaven, as far as their inner self is concerned, and in an angelic community there, devoted to the same kind of goodness.
And this is raises an important point, which is that what Swedenborg's describing about the churches was a better reflection of the way he describes heaven now, the way that heaven is and always has been, which is that there are all these different communities. They see things quite differently. He says the light is different. And if you know Swedenborg's idea of correspondences, that means your whole thought structure, the way that you see reality, is different in these different communities. They worship God in different ways, and yet they all work together because they're part of this whole cooperative. And so the churches then had more of a reflection of that quality of heaven.
That's how heaven would have to be. And a lot of times in religion, we're thinking about, will you get to heaven or not? And here he's saying that as your intent in doing good out of love and charity, so the two sort of classes of feelings, you're already in heaven.
Yes.
As to your inner nature. So the spirit part of you, which is like the conscious part of you, which exists right now in the afterlife. Like there's a spirit in a body, right? Which a lot of people say that. Well, where does a spirit live? Where does a spirit live? It lives in the afterlife. If you're intent on doing good out of love, your spirit actually moves into a community of angels in heaven. So you're already got there once you're intent on doing good out of love and charity.
This is so crucial. To me, the most crucial idea is that idea of heaven on earth. It's right in the prayer, that idea of heaven on earth. And he just gave us the recipe. That's it. If love becomes the most important thing in your life, boom, you're there, heaven on earth. You're there.
And the most important thing that you look for in other people.
Yes.
You're looking for, like, where am I? Are we on the same team? Oh yeah, right. There you go. You're doing that good of love. That's what's important. So look what else you get if you're in this state. This raises their minds inward and therefore yields them wisdom. Wisdom cannot come from anywhere but heaven, or rather from the Lord through heaven. And heaven holds wisdom because its inhabitants are dedicated to what is good.
Swedenborg so often has this kind of hierarchy of, okay, here's just mere knowledge. It's just like data. Okay, you've accumulated all. He's a big fan of knowledge. He's a very, very one of the most knowledgeable people in the world at his time. He's a fan, but knowledge is just here. That it's a building block. It's a container. He says. Mm-hmm. Then you have understanding, which is you can have a lot of sort of data, but if you don't. You need to organize it, right? Yeah. Like you need to, I see what's going on here. The reason this is like this and that's like that is because there's this overarching pattern. You see what I mean? And that's a level of understanding. And wisdom almost transcends all of it. It almost departs from a cognitive level because it's so much about love and compassion. It's a much, much higher level, or more inward, as he often expresses it.
Yeah, and to understand that's the way it tends. Like, why does knowledge exist? To get you to a point where you can live wisely, which is knowing how to live from love.
Yeah, and isn't that what human society, isn't that what groups all over the world? What you need is that wisdom. Wisdom's what we need, right? A lack of wisdom is what's going on down here.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned heaven on earth, which is ostensibly the point of the existence of Earth. I mean, the point of the existence of reality, according to Swedenborg, is that there would be a heaven from the human race.
Yeah.
So there's the people in the state of happiness that comes from being loving, which has in it everything we're looking for: peace, innocence, joy, all that. That's why anything exists.
And because of his idea, which we've probably mentioned before in other episodes, if people have seen those, that the who populates the heavens is just people who used to live in this world and they died. That's where we go after we die. It's important to get, because that's the goal. It's important to get the farm team also working well down here.
That's right. That's right. We're the raw materials from which heaven is crafted. Man, also I think that last clause, heaven holds wisdom because its inhabitants are dedicated to what is good. You'd think, well, of course, like heaven would have wisdom in it. Because it's heaven. That's why it has.
Yeah.
But why does it have wisdom in it? Because its inhabitants are dedicated to what is good.
And what is good, to me, this is so much a part about what we're talking about today, is it takes a lot of wisdom. Because good kind of has in it that idea that you mentioned of effectiveness, right? It's not, okay, here, I'll just hand you some money or something like that. Well, what effect will that have on you? Is that good? Do you feel better after I give that to you? Or does it actually weaken you in certain ways? Or something, to be effective, to be actually good, to actually move, to be of benefit.
Right. Well, and if you what you're caring about is the happiness of this person, I guess that's like a mini version of how God treats us.
Yes, this is really. That's where this all comes from, because the whole structure of the spiritual world is a map of the way the Lord sees what's best for each person here. I think if you're here, that's best for your type of person in the state you're in right now, and
because Swedenborg has this whole subset of his theology, which is about divine providence. And this is the way that God runs our lives, basically. And always all the laws of that are, it's doing what's best for our eternal state at any moment. So even though like your life doesn't go the way you would plan it if you could just plan it, you don't feel the way every day that you feel like you want to feel, that's being the only reason that any of that stuff happens is it's ultimately looking toward a happy state to eternity, the happiest possible state to eternity for everyone, right?
For everyone. And there's a specific passage, I think, somewhere where Swedenborg says that really the heart of providence is placing people in the right spot in the spiritual world. Like the whole thing is almost like an employment program or something where, okay, I think this is what you're well suited to. This is the place where you'll thrive. This is where you'll do the most good. It'll be the most good for you. So that's like a huge, very detailed version of what we're clumsily trying to do down here in the way that we love our fellow human beings.
So you had this ancient wisdom, but then we lost it. We fumbled it. This is continuing in 6630. However, this ancient wisdom dwindled over time. The farther the human race moved from doing good out of love for the Lord and out of charity for one's neighbor, the farther it also moved from heaven and consequently from wisdom. That is why humankind changed from being internal to being more and more external.
So there's some relationship between love, wisdom, and heaven. Mm-hmm. And we managed to move away from all of them at once.
Okay, and not only that, but so as we use it was the loss of this wisdom, the wisdom about the importance of neighborly love, that made us get out of heaven. All those cascading effects happened. And then there's another change it affected, which is we went from being internal to be more and more external.
Yes, that's right. So this depth, this wisdom, that got compromised.
When humankind became external, it also became worldly and bodily centered, or body-centered. And when people become worldly and body-centered, they lose all interest in heavenly matters. Heavenly realities seem too distant to believe in, because the pleasures of earthly kinds of love then take over completely, and along with them all the evils rendered pleasant by those kinds of love. Then anything a person hears about life after death, heaven or hell, is like a straw in the wind. Now seen, now gone. You have states that you get into where you're like, nah, this like life after death, or this religion stuff, or there's just a certain segment of the culture, human culture, that's like just like, come on, don't talk to me about that. What are you even talking about?
There are states where it seems like a big nothing. Like, why are we even talking about this? What is this?
So that is, even though you'd think that's the most interesting thing that exists, is what's the life after death, because everybody dies.
It does seem very popular.
It's like undefeated, as they say. So what happens then, you'd think, is the thing.
There's an appalling lack of curiosity. Yeah.
And it might actually even be not just like, well, what does happen to consciousness, but particularly the idea of heaven and of God, and those concepts in themselves become distasteful as you move away from love.
Yeah, because I can't think of a religious system, not that I'm an expert in all these things all over the whole planet or something, but is there really a system that isn't about the idea that you can position yourself, you can do better or worse with what you do now will have an impact? The simple idea of karma is that, if you do a better job now, your situation in the future, even if it's quote unquote a different person, will be better. It'll be improved as a result of that. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what we're talking about. And yet when you get so worldly and body centered and everything, it's like, doesn't seem to matter anymore.
It seems like the human race can be so preoccupied with relatively worthless stuff that we don't solve the main problems. Even just if you keep it on the physical level, like there's all kinds of suffering and things that could be abated, but so much of human energy goes into like vice and frivolousness that there's some frivolousness you probably need, but like there's a lot of important things to do, and we don't always get on doing those things.
No, we're pretty childish. I certainly like to picture a human race in the future that's more evolved and wiser, and because I think maybe we're just in the very early days of this humanity thing, and we're not very good at it yet.
We gotta gotta get back some form of this ancient wisdom. For the same reason, The theology of neighborly love that was so precious to the ancients is among today's lost knowledge. Who today knows what neighborly love really is? Or what, and this is, I think, a key for this episode, what our neighbor really is.
Oh, well, there's a definition that we probably shouldn't leave out. Yeah. What or who is the neighbor? What are you even talking about? Yeah.
And yet, that theology abounds with so many secrets of such tremendous importance that not a thousandth of it can be written down. The whole sacred scripture is nothing but teachings about love and charity. Well, sacred scripture being the Bible?
The Bible, Old and New Testament, and what's amazing about that is, that's an astonishing statement. Okay, here I'll tell you the Cliff Notes, like the really soundbite version of the Bible, is it's all about that. B, how astounding that there are many, many people who read that book very earnestly and don't see that in there,
Yeah.
They don't get that out of the book.
Well, they see it in some places when Jesus says, love your neighbor as yourself, that kind of thing.
Yeah. But even the whole importance of it, it's like, it's a whole book about faith. You just have to have faith in Jesus. Doesn't matter how you live. It's like, wow,
right.
Is that the same book?
And then also, though, like, how to construct the ark. How many animals you get to go into the Noah's Ark. That's not a teaching about love. Maybe that's a teaching about obedience to God or something. But
right now in what I'm editing in Secrets of Heaven, just this morning before I came here, it's all about the layers of the ephod, the breastplate, the Urim and the Thummim. It's Aaron's vestments, the vestments of the high priest, specifically where were the clasps attached, and there was a sash and all this stuff. It's going on for ages.
And so Swedenborg makes the claim that all those details about Aaron's breastplate, ephod stuff, if you understand correspondences, so the symbolism that it's written in, it is what? It's a teaching about love and charity. It is part of this theology of how do you really effectively love and help people.
He says explicitly that those vestments were about what holds heaven together. And what holds heaven together is love. I mean, it's exactly what we're talking about.
Dude, that's what it says?
Yeah, that's what it says.
It's about how heaven is constructed.
What holds it together? Why does one heaven, how is it attached to another heaven? That's what this is all about.
Man, and so the heavens is the state you're supposed to be in.
Yeah.
To be happy. Crazy. The Lord teaches this too, saying, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and great commandment. A second is similar to it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments depend the law and the prophets. So, I mean, right there, that seems to back up Swedenborg's statement.
Yes.
That all sacred scripture is about love and charity, because he's saying all the law and the prophets, which is the entirety of scripture, somehow hang on love God and love your neighbor.
So he did kind of make that clear in the book. It's surprising we don't get it right.
On these two hang all the law and the prophets. But then how does the ephod and the description of how does that hang on love your God? And
that's right.
I guess you could say, like, on a very rudimentary level, it's important to get this right in order to show respect to God or something. But still, why though? Why? So there's so much more in it. That's what's so great about the system of correspondences in the Bible. It takes something like that. If you got people who need help and you want to help them, it takes the ephod, and actually, shows you how it's something that you could actually use to help someone.
It's great.
It brings it to life. I feel like that's why I like Swedenborg's explanation of the Bible. It brings all that stuff that seems remote and not really about the love thing. It brings it into that.
As you say, there are a number of passages in Scripture directly about loving other people or not mistreating them, Ten Commandments, parables, and so on. But all that other, the construction of the temple and all these other things, as you're talking about, the genealogies and everything, what does that have to do with it? I love that Swedenborg can show you how, it really is the entire thing. All the law and the prophets is about these two loves.
Since the theology of neighborly love is among today's lost knowledge, the theology of faith is divorced from the truth. So we don't get what's going on, or didn't in the 1700s when Swedenborg was writing this. So with the Lord's divine mercy, let me convey that theology. You're about to get it.
That's kind of this is thunderous.
You're about to get it right here.
This is the beginning of volume 10, right? That's
right. Just came out. Go to Swedenborg.com if you want to grab that thing. All right, here we go. Hey, do you want the message in this video to reach the world? Your donation can make it happen. We here at the Swedenborg Foundation are a not-for-profit, so we can only do what we do, reach the people we reach, spread the message we spread because of donations like the one that maybe you're going to give us. Click the link in the description. Any contribution size helps. Back to the show. It begins with the different types of the neighbor. I should start by defining the neighbor toward whom we are to practice that love.
Seems like a sensible place to start.
Those who do not know which people are their neighbor are liable to exercise charity indiscriminately, in the same way toward the evil as toward the good.
Oh.
Charity then ceases to be charity, because the evil use the kindnesses done to them to hurt their neighbor, but the good use them to help.
Yeah, I think it's not a bad thought, but I think there is in a lot of people that sense, which Swedenborg absolutely affirms, that absolutely everybody is your neighbor. That's a really important sort of entry level thought, which is that, and yet there are definitely people who act like, oh no, just these people are my neighbor. All those other people, I really don't have to worry about at all. And so Swedenborg is clear that no, in True Christianity in particular, he talks about this, that everybody is the neighbor who is to be loved, but then he says in different ways. And this example about the helping the evil is, oh, wait a second.
Well, I think it's telling that he says people are liable to exercise charity indiscriminately in the same way toward the evil as toward the good.
Exactly.
Not that you don't exercise charity towards, and I know the evil is a cartoony label, but this is how we differentiate toward the evil and the. You don't do the same thing.
No, you don't do the same thing, but you still are charged with loving all kinds of people in all their different states. And this was part of that ancient wisdom, wasn't it? To figure out what state someone is in and then figure out what is the remedy. It's almost like that app that you can hold up in front of a plant and it says, well, this plant needs sugar or this plant needs,
Everybody knows this is true when you start in little things, like with children, right? When you're trying to raise a kid, you know that like you can't give them everything they want all the time and allow all their behavior and just like whatever you do is great. Whatever you do,
you'll create a monster.
Well, because you just see that happen really quick. But you also can't just like you do exactly what I say.
Crush their spirit.
Yeah. You see this tension. It's a hard thing to figure out. You see this tension in society, between like law and order and like having a just justice system. It's like there's like, okay, you don't want to steamroll people that maybe did a little something wrong, and now you're throwing the book at them, and that destroys their chance to have a good life. At the same time, if you're too lenient with certain people, you're being cruel to their next victim because they get. So this is like the kind of stuff that society really has to grapple with.
I picture a classroom where you have a teacher and you realize that some of the kids maybe are sort of hard-headed and so you need to kind of put the fear of God into them in some way, and yet you've got other very sensitive kids who will just it'll just destroy them. They'll be unable to function with the same thing that would be just the right application of force for this kid. It would be devastating to this other child.
So here's how the ancients used to deal with it. The ancients divided the neighbor into categories, and named the categories after those people in the world who seemed more in need of aid than others.
So categorizing sort of, I imagine some people watching this show will feel like, well, hang on, isn't that like a lot of bad things that happen in society is because you're saying, oh, it almost sounds like prejudice or something, doesn't it? Like stereotyping or something. Right. I just imagine people feeling like, oh, wait, don't tell me that.
But in the positive sense, if you're having a problem, let's say you're having like a mental health problem, and you're just like getting battered around by it, and you don't really know what it is or how to deal with it, and then somebody can like say, oh, you know what you have is this, because look, all of your symptoms match up with this description, and then we can teach you about all the features of it, and we can teach you about how people get help with it. That's really great.
That's
you want to be in that category.
You want to be, and if it's just a hair off, just a couple of feet off in the diagnosis, and they're giving you the wrong things or the wrong advice, it's like, no, it's not really hitting the target. You want to get it quite precisely like that.
But the ancient people are doing this not just for medical categories, but for general states of life in people. So and states of the neighbor. In order to know what kind of charity to exercise, people in the church definitely need to know about the differences in types of neighbor. These differences depend on the individual kind of goodness in each neighbor. Furthermore, since everything good comes from the Lord in the highest sense and in a surpassing degree is the ultimate neighbor, the origin of what it means to be a neighbor. From this it follows that here we go, here's a little definition for you. The more of the Lord each person has in him or herself, the more he or she is our neighbor. In addition, since no one receives the Lord in the same way, that is, receives the goodness that radiates from him in the same way, no one is our neighbor in the same way as another either.
Well, I would rather sort of a one-size-fits-all. This is a little too complicated.
That's easier.
Yeah, it's very nuanced, isn't it? Because now you're not just even talking about categories. You're talking about every single person is unique. They need something a little different.
I think you see that with relationships that you have. It's not always clear sort of what your role is to a person, but like there's certain friends that I have that I know when I'm around them, like this is the way I can be a positive thing in their life. If I'm like this.
Yeah.
Which is not the same thing I would be. And the same thing for me, like different relationships will feed me in different ways.
Right.
I'm in need in different ways to different people. Definitely.
And I love the presumption behind all this. There's a certain kind of mindset that feels like the other people in the world are either, okay, they're annoying, or maybe they can amuse or entertain me, or I can laugh at them, or, what are we doing with all these other humans?
I know. There's so many humans.
And this attitude is, I'm here to help. That's the presumption behind all of it. Like, number one is, I exist in order to help these people. I don't know if I can help them. I don't know if I can be a benefit. But if everybody has that mindset that we're all here to help each other, then number two is, okay, now we got to get to the next level, which is what is helpful, what's going on with them, how do I find out, and how do I dial in, my input in their life to be more effective.
Wow. Well, that's something that I exist in order to help people. I don't know, man. That's pretty good. So that your default program when you start out in life is, I exist in order to help myself. Or let's just generalize.
Yeah,
it's
sure.
You're preoccupied with yourself and how do people like you and what kind of and what can you achieve, and you kind of like, how do I make my life go well? But what
you're horrified if somebody impacts your life negatively. If somebody takes away something that you like, or they weren't the way that you thought they should be toward you, or I don't know. It's all about yourself.
Yeah, but this is really hitting me now. When you wake up in the morning, you think like, all right, I exist to help. I know I'm just repeating what you said over and over, but it's just like, I'm like it's starting to settle into my little brainstem. I exist to help people. So I'll look around or to help. Yeah, to help. We'll just say to help. So I look around and it's like, where's all the places that I can be helpful? Because that's what I am.
Yeah.
That's what I am, is a helper machine. How can I help? Well, come on. Does that might not seem profound, but to me, like that, I think that's a big deal.
It's night and day from that other view of what
it's a mental flip.
Why other people are here. Like, it is so easy. I've even thought about it the way that you physically, when you look out, you look like my hand looks huge to me. Like it's almost obliterates, half of the world. And everybody else seems sort of little bit players, little small people. It's quite a conversion where you get to the point of realizing, wow, all of those people have, the humanity that I have, they all have. Their lives to them are as important as my life is to me, and start to get over this fallacy of just even from the physical perspective of looking larger to yourself than other people. Like you look huge and dominant in your own eyes.
It changes my sense of my interest in myself. So you want to know about yourself, and you want to know what's your capabilities and what kind of person are you,
strengths,
and
weaknesses, and threats and opportunities.
Yeah, that you want to SWAT yourself.
Yeah.
And you can, if you're not charity focused, you just the default is, well, because I want to consider myself and I want to take stock of myself and I want to feel good about that's what it is. Sure, that's fine. But the next level is, well, if I exist to help, I'm a helper machine. I want to know how this thing works because it's with an eye toward application and helping. What can I do that helps? Just saying.
Wow, that's wow. Because every single person is going to have different answers to that question. By definition, we're all unique, and so yeah.
So, what situations am I placed in by Providence where I can be helpful? You're not going to know for sure. You're not going to always get it right, but to have that kind of mindset and intent.
Yeah.
Dude.
Yeah.
Dude. Double dude. Okay. So let's talk more about what it is that makes someone the neighbor. Because to help, the neighbor is the thing that can be helped in someone.
Yes. It's almost like it struck me in the book of Revelation that the letters that are written there in chapters 2 and 3 are all to the angel of the churches, not to the church themselves, but to the angel of the church. And in a way, when you say that the true neighbor is the Lord, which would be equivalent to the love, the goodness in another person, what's the highest thing? Because we can also benefit the lowest thing in each other. We can bring out bad things in other people, or connect in negative ways. But to think about what is the best in this person, and how do I? Because the neighbor is no longer just exactly the outline of that person. It's a quality in them that you're trying to benefit.
Absolutely everyone in the heavens and on earth has a different sort of goodness.
That makes it easy.
There you go. You just have to custom
Whoever
solution.
This person is, they're not anything like anybody else I've
Custom
ever seen.
solution.
Okay, good.
One and the same kind of goodness can never exist in two people. It has to vary in order for each kind to remain in existence separately. It's like a little metaphysics.
Well, I'd never thought about the angle you brought out a little minute ago about, but who am I? Because you're focused on the neighbor. You think about all these different neighbors, but who am I? What unique gifts and abilities do I have to be able to interact with people?
Yeah, but I only said that.
Ways,
you never thought about that until I said that. I only said that because of the thing you said. So I don't know.
So it's my fault, isn't it?
I'm just saying. It's just like, yeah. You led. It's Swedenborg says that there's inflow from the spiritual world. That our insights. We talked in the beginning about it. Have you get into a certain place? Wisdom comes from heaven. And that's true for every human being ever.
That's right.
Anything wise that comes out comes from heaven. So I do feel like that's why I think people enjoy conversations. Not that y'all are enjoying this one. You're probably just
we're not presuming anything.
Yeah, like I can't find the button and it's still going. I can't turn it off.
Yeah, I'm out for a walk and I can't reach my phone to shut it off.
I'm in the middle of a run or something. But this is why podcasts and things take the world by storm, because in conversation you actually can. Heaven is trying to introduce ideas. Yeah. And it doesn't have to be any conversation with someone. Heaven is trying to introduce ideas. So we can sit here and be like, oh yeah, I never thought, like you and I bring our brains to this, the same brains we always had with the same rattling around stuff in there.
Yeah.
And then suddenly it's like two thoughts in a row. You say something that I never really thought of, even though we both reviewed this script beforehand. And then you were like, I never thought of when you said that. I was like, no, it's gotta be that there's some kind of larger thing that comes through human beings. And I'm not saying this is a very profound example of it. This might be the worst example of it of all time.
Right.
But for us, it's profound.
Oh, well, I love doing this show because it may seem like we sit here and say things we already know, but a lot of what we say, we didn't know yesterday or this morning,
We usually don't know what we're talking about.
It happens in real time. And I walk away just thinking about it for days afterward because of the insights that come up in this show. And these are passages that I just edited. I just did volume 10. No,
this is one of the reasons why I vouch for the quality of Swedenborg's ideas.
Yeah.
That I think they came from outside, just like I'm saying, I think that they came from heaven because of the way in which they continue to produce good insights.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it seems like. It seems to me like it's alive. It's alive. So, I'm sure there's a lot of things that do that for people. For me, just consistently coming back to it's like, oh, this does continue to equip me to see clearly how life is. Because that insight, I know we're lingering on this longer than we need to. There's nothing they can do. They can't edit this whole part out because when would it start? But that insight about, okay, I exist as a helper machine. I know that sounds a little too clinical and cold, but I exist like that. That's my primary thing is I wake up as me in the morning and I look out into the world and say, what positive change can I affect in the world today? Yeah. What am I equipped to do? That's a great attitude.
That is a great attitude.
Okay.
It's so much better than just like, how can I get my needs met today? Or, and that's not nothing either.
It's not nothing, but
as a sole or primary focus, it feels a little empty.
You probably won't be as happy and the world won't work as well. So that's good. You pull this out of here, then that's good. It has to vary in order for each kind to remain in existence separately. That's kind of like almost metaphysical, or like if it's like in a digital space, if like two things have the exact same code, then they're just a copy of the same thing.
They have the same URL or something.
That's him, kind of throwing in some metaphysics there. However, no one, not even an angel, can know all these variations, and therefore all the differences in types of neighbor, as determined by acceptance of the Lord. In other words, acceptance of the goodness radiating from him. So we're sitting here telling you there's these categories of the neighbor, you got to know how to treat people differently, and then we're telling you it's way too complicated.
You can't do it.
You'll never know. You'll never get it. There's infinite. There's all the people you ever met. Every one of them is different. You won't even know it. Even angels can't know it.
And we're different from 1 hour to the next. Like what we need at breakfast might be different than what we need at lunch.
So game over.
No.
We can know only in general, which means that we can know only the overall categories and several subcategories of neighbor. Besides, the Lord asks no more of people in the church than for them to live by what they know.
Okay.
Hey,
now that's pretty merciful.
Just try it out. Just, like, it's enough. Look, there's however many hundreds of billions of individuals and such, but if you can just know a few general categories and subcategories, go for it. That'll do. Also, by the way, it says the Lord asks no more of people in the church than for them to live by what they know. What did we learn the church is? Everybody who's living
a good
and trying to live a life of neighborly love.
Of neighborly love.
So that's
kindness,
a free and open thing. Like nobody's gatekeeping that. If you decide in your heart, I'm going to try to live a life of neighborly love, then you're all right, welcome.
You're in.
Especially you're more and more in the more you actually take some actions through that. But when you're in, one of the features is God is, so according to this, God is, hoping you'll live a certain way. Wait, where does it say it? He's asking things of you, and he's saying, just try to live by what you know.
Do your best, basically.
You know different things,
like
different truths across different religious traditions or spiritual. Like, okay, just try to live by what you. If you live in a life of neighborly goodness, then live by what you know. Okay.
And I like this kind of developmental feeling in that, because if you're doing your best, if you're trying, then after a while, if you realize, oh wait, I think this is actually enabling, or I think I'm not doing this right, or it doesn't seem effective. They don't, try something else.
Right.
And come to a different understanding and talk to somebody else and hear, oh, that's a very different perspective. I hadn't thought of that. Read a book, listen to an audiobook or something and try to figure out how to do a better job of it.
The Lord is present in goodness because goodness is his, and the extent of his presence depends on the quality of the goodness. I just read that like it was nothing, but that's something.
That's a very big statement.
The Lord is present in goodness because goodness is his. So,
and again, no gatekeeper on who gets to have.
The Lord is
wait, you're not allowed to have goodness. You're in the wrong religion. No.
Goodness. So there's so much. I guess it's hard to get edges around the definition of what is good, but you kind of know it when you see it. And Swedenborg, at times, he'll use that word so much and really be so unhelpful in telling you what it means. Every once in a while, though, he'll give you some hints. Yeah. I think he just assumes you know what good. Yeah. Bonum is the Latin, right?
That's right.
So he's, right. I know, right? You're standing on the shoulders of giants being here on this show with me. So he'll say, like, even things like something that tastes good. That's a goodness. Something that sounds good.
Yes.
That's good. And then it moves into more complex kinds of goodness, like I'm going to pick up somebody's books that drop them so that they feel better. Like there's goodness in that. So
yeah, and he even talks about inanimate objects, and for some reason, I don't know why. I think it's because I've had a succession of really bad toasters in my life. But I think about the qualities.
Here we go. He's about to hold forth.
Sorry if this is a bit of a rant. No, but the toaster, like what makes a good toaster is different than what. It's somewhat like a good air fryer, but it's completely different than a good, washing machine or something. The goodness is according to that usefulness that the function that object is there to provide. And so you think, it shouldn't overburn, it shouldn't cause a fire, it shouldn't burn your hands, it shouldn't, what would good be in that situation? Mm-hmm. And I think he really is talking in that way. And so people who have a certain function in society, what would be a good that? What would be the qualities of a good contractor or a good manager in a business or whatever it is.
That's true. And you might think that's mundane. But when you get a good contractor who you can trust is giving you the right price, and they fix the thing the way they're supposed to. And that feels great.
It feels great.
And the Lord is in that.
Yeah.
So the goodness is his. So every time you've been touched by goodness, you're seeing the quality. The Lord is in the goodness because the goodness is, if you're trying to picture God, picture that. Like that's the nature of God, okay? I know that's like kind of out there, but there it is. And the extent of his presence depends on the quality of the goodness. So he can be more or less. Yeah, how good is it? How genuinely good is it? In other places, he'll talk about how it's kind of like, gold leaf on something versus a solid gold object.
All the way through.
There are some actions that are, it's like a pretty good thing to do, but you're doing it for selfish reasons, or, it's kind of on the mark, but it kind of, like, there's some good, but then there's things that get to be more and more and more and more, like, that was really good.
Maybe I'm out of touch with the language as it is spoke.
Impossible.
But don't people say things like, no, that was solid gold, of something, right? Don't they?
Millennials say that. No. They're like, hey, man, up top, that was solid gold.
But don't we have a sense somewhere
yes.
that would be, wow, that person not only this, but they also this, when they could have been really by all rights.
Heart of gold.
They could have taken this angle on it, and instead they really went the extra mile and they did this, that, and the other thing.
That was so pure.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Pure is another great word. Yeah. That's right.
If somebody does something that's really sweet.
Yeah. Yeah, and you don't sense at all that they're waiting for their payback or something.
Right. So there'd be more, you see a little more of the character of the Lord in that. Moreover, since the origin of the neighbor is to be traced to the Lord, distinctions among different kinds of neighbor depend on the Lord's presence within goodness, and therefore on the quality of the goodness. I'm just going to go on, because we could linger on that, but maybe he's going to give us a little more clarity here. The fact that we are a neighbor according to the quality of our goodness is evident from the Lord's parable about the man who fell among robbers. Though he was half dead, a priest passed by him, as did a Levite, but a Samaritan bandaged his wounds. This is the famous story of the Good Samaritan.
Story, right.
Poured on oil and wine, lifted the man onto the Samaritan's own beast of burden, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The Samaritan is the one called neighbor, because he exercised neighborly kindness. I think a lot of people miss that in the story of the Good Samaritan.
Yes.
That Jesus says, to his disciples, you think that the story is about, look, who's the neighbor? The guy who fell among thieves.
The guy who got hurt.
And that's your neighbor. The Levite. Does everyone know that story? The two guys passed by. They're both like religious figures.
They're both from the priestly order, the different sort of layers of the priestly order. Mm-hmm. And they kind of like, oh, I don't want to get involved, which, you can relate to. Sometimes you feel like, oh, that looks like a mess. I'm not going to get involved.
And you think the story is about, well, that guy who got attacked is your neighbor.
That's the neighbor.
But at the end, Jesus says, who was the neighbor? And the disciples say, him who showed mercy. So it's the Samaritan is the neighbor.
And the priest was the highest level within their hierarchy. The Levite was a step below that, but also a functionary within the religion. Mm-hmm. The Samaritans were horrible people to them who sort of had a kind of hybrid, dumb version of the religion. Like they didn't want to have anything to do with them. And so when the Lord picks a Samaritan as this example, but what's beautiful about it, part of what I hear him saying in that is that we make it so much about who are, like the Samaritan is the wrong sort of person. You should not be eating with them. You should not be talking with them or anything like that. And he's just erases that with this story. And also doesn't come off very well for the priest or the Levite who does not care for this person who's obviously in a very difficult state. But when you look at what the Samaritan does, I love the story because he puts him on his own animal, like, here, let me help you. And obviously this guy was so he wasn't out there just patrolling for people who were doing badly. He had something going on in his life, but he's interrupted it for this. And then he takes the wine and the oil that he's got, try to heal the wound, takes him to an inn, and then pays the guy for a couple of days and says, if he needs any more time, I'll pay you more next time I come through. Now that's, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. You did A, B, C, D, E, F, and G, like the whole thing. And that quality, and so forget about Samaritan or not Samaritan, it's who did all of that, even to the point of saying, he might need more than I can give him right now. But I'll get you on the flip side,
And so you're a little moved right now. I don't know if people at home
probably
Jonathan,
can't tell.
He'll do this choking up thing. And I, what I think it is? I mean, what it seems like to me is like when you're moved by goodness, that's goodness. So that's like, because that's what, and everyone is moved. Everyone can get choked up when these. I remember I had a phase. I had a phase when all the kids' books I would read to my daughter. I would just get teary at the end of them. There's this one that was like, it was called, like Puppy and Piggy on the Farm or something. And it's just like all the different farm animals and what they do. They like to walk and honk and all this stuff. And then at the end, it was about the baby, and baby loves his blanket. And I was just like, oh my gosh, the baby does. I don't know. Like I was just in this phase. So what I'm saying is like, so you're getting moved. People get moved. Everyone gets moved. What I think the insight is here is the reason why is because we're seeing the Lord. Like we're seeing a little bit of the Lord, and the Lord. You can think about God, and God seems stuffy and weird and religious and vengeful and absent and all that stuff. But when you actually encounter the real God, then God is really beautiful. Really noble, and just like moves you to tears.
How do you feel if you're the person who was attacked? Like, wow, that Samaritan saved your life.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And people can say that Swedenborg, who has these extra insights, right? You've got the Bible, but then you've got Swedenborg, and he's got all this stuff that seems far afield. However, just right here, we're talking in the beginning about Swedenborg saying he went back and talked to ancient people that lived thousands of years ago on this planet, and what he learned was they had a single central theology, which was that if you're a good person, you're in the church with me. And doctrinal ideas, they're something, but they're not enough to form a division there. So then, and you can say, well, you're just saying that. But then Jesus is telling this story, and you just told me the Samaritans, the main reason why they weren't in the in crowd, that the context is because they had this like weird different religion thing.
Yeah.
And Jesus is saying remember that guy who has the wrong ideas, but you can see that he's living this life of love. So who's the neighbor? Who's the neighbor? Was like someone who's close to you. Like it's that exact principle being displayed there.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. And
if you read that story in Luke, you'll see exactly what you were just saying, which is that it really does, the camera seems to be on the person who's hurt. That's the neighbor. Okay. Oh, he's showing me who the neighbor is. And then at the end he says, so which one was a neighbor to the guy who was hurt? Oh, wait, what? It shifted around.
Swedenborg continues, this shows that a neighbor means people with goodness.
So it was the goodness of the Samaritan. That's why he's called the Good Samaritan, right? That's the heading in the Bible, the Good Samaritan.
And then, so right then, you're like, oh, that's so exclusive. Okay, so only people that it is true that people with evil are our neighbor. Mm-hmm. You were saying at the beginning, but in an entirely different respect. And that being so, they are to be helped in quite another way. So yes, the imperative that you're supposed to help everyone.
Yeah.
Of course you are, because that's the right thing to do. You want to help everyone. The way in which you help somebody who's got goodness is different than the way in which you help somebody who has evil. And I guess you never know for sure who has what, because you can never know somebody's spiritual state. You don't know. You don't even know for yourself, how much is.
Yeah.
And we can get into, in case people aren't familiar with like good and evil as label. In Swedenborg, those are like very technical terms about sort of the state of the different affections and thoughts in your spirit. Like you really could, like, whether we want to label it something different, you really could get in with a microscope and say like, oh yeah, this particular thing that you do, this is generally evil, we're trying to get that less and less and less. This is good, we're trying to expand that. Like you can get in there and see it, but you never know for sure who's wrapped up in what kind of evils and what kind of good. But God can see it really clearly. It's just like if you were to look at somebody, somehow you could see, like examining like a part of their body that's like got infection, and you're like, oh yeah, this is exactly where those bacteria are, and this is exactly the area we need to treat with this antibiotic cream or something. And then you can see, oh no, over here there's not. So there is, like, it would be like that. Like there's good and evil in there.
Yeah, and it's even to the point where the same person in a different state needs different things. We talked about that a little bit before, but I'm suddenly thinking the biblical example another biblical example of Jesus with Peter, where in one story he says, "You're Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it." Just like showering him with love. Saying, 8 verses later, and then Jesus goes on to say, "I'm going to be crucified. I'm going to be tortured and killed, and then I'll rise on the third day." And Peter, if I'm remembering correctly, actually takes Jesus aside and says, "Don't say that." And what does Jesus say? The same guy who he just called a rock.
Yep.
He says, "Get behind me, Satan." To the guy he just called the rock.
Yeah.
Well, that's because Jesus is really in touch with what's going on inside that person and what would be effective. So what Peter needs now is he needs, to be bolstered. A few minutes later, it's like, hey, you are not with the if you don't understand the crucifixion, you're not really with the program. You got to get in line here and get with the program. Well, and so that's another level of nuance. And again, it speaks to this idea that the neighbor is not actually that person with that name. It's the state. You would treat the different states. I know it's getting way too nuanced, but it's fascinating to see that in the New Testament right there.
It's funny because right as you were saying that, I was getting ready to say, it's just common sense. You're like, it's too nuanced. And I'm like, it's just common sense because, again, if you're raising a kid, depends on what state they're in.
It's the ultimate test of these kind of principles, isn't it?
I'm saying that like I'm doing any kind of good job, but I'm not, but I'm trying. What you have is there's a time in which, the person you're trying to shape well is doing stuff that you think that's good. Those are good behaviors. I'm gonna reinforce those.
Yeah. That's right.
Like I'll get you another one of these. Yeah, sure. And there's times when, this is not that good. You act differently. You act differently toward them. The same thing with your own mind, though. That's saying if you can't think of anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. That's you telling
you're really, really going deep here about your own mind. Okay, I can't wait to hear what you're going to say.
Well, there's times when the things you want to say are great, and you've got a little filter. So most people do that. Like, am I going to say this or not? And there's times when you're like, oh yeah, this is great. Let me say that. And there's other times the exact same mind, exact same mouth, and everything. Your little filter says, "Get behind me, Satan." Like, don't let that out of your mouth. Same person.
That is so true. Isn't that why I'm going to really have to think about that?
It's Peter. Like, I'm going to build my rock on this.
You have to be a neighbor to yourself in a different way, because it's really true. I've definitely seen it from the parenting angle, which is such a great analogy, where it's just like that same love, the sugar, the warmth, the cuddling or whatever that was the right thing in this particular state. In that next state, no, it's got to be a sterner kind of thing. Because some of these, we're dealing with thoughts and feelings that flow in, and some of these thoughts are like, oh, well, say this nasty thing, bite their head off right now. You've got them right where you want them.
Yeah.
And you have to say, pull back on that leash of that thought. What does the dog whisperer do?
Thank you for pulling back so many times this episode. By the way, I know I've seen a couple of times when I try to use a word incorrectly and you're. Okay. So then, how do we recognize the neighbor? Since it is the nature of goodness that determines in what way an individual is our neighbor, it is love that does so. No goodness can exist that does not belong to love. Love is the source of all goodness and therefore of the quality of a given kind of goodness. Which is like, what's the difference between love and good? Let's just let him continue.
Yeah.
The fact that love is what makes a person a neighbor, and that the quality of the love determines the kind of neighbor a person is, can be plainly seen from people who love themselves.
This I can relate to.
We're about to get the opposite. Now, we just recorded a show that I think we'll have posted right before this one about Swedenborg's relationship to loving yourself. And
That's
how
right.
he'll generally use that in a negative sense. And I think this is about to illustrate, it's not like have a healthy self-esteem. I think this is going to illustrate that really well.
Yeah.
So people who love themselves, basically you could substitute for that selfish, self-centered, narcissistic, to varying degree people.
Yeah.
So this is what it says. The individuals they acknowledge as their neighbor are those who love them the most.
Oh, okay. So now we're talking about, this is so interesting that all the layers, it's complex, isn't it? But so we're looking at a very self-centered person.
Yes.
Who do they think is their neighbor?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, you're good to me, I love you.
You're in.
You cross me,
you're out.
You're out.
And that there could be 5 minutes between those two different, right?
Yeah.
And so they're treating their neighbor according to the input that they're getting from that person. And if they're saying, "Oh, I love you. You're the greatest. You're the greatest," and
yes,
and I'll do anything you want, and then say, "Well, no, that's a dumb idea," they say, and then you say, I didn't bring you in here to tell me that I've got a stupid idea."
Swedenborg will. That's right. That's not what you're here for. Swedenborg will elsewhere say that for somebody who's like absorbed in this love of self, you love everyone who agrees with you or flatters you.
That's right.
Okay, and this is so true of the ego.
You can see it. This is the quality.
I've seen it in myself.
We've all got that part.
I've had people that I kind of have like a little grudge against, and then I hear that they said something flattering about me, and I'm like, oh, well, they're not that bad. Actually, I
like them.
I kind of like that. You just have that instinct.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so the individuals they acknowledge as their neighbor are those who love them the most. That is, so far as another belongs to them and is therefore subsumed by them, they hug and kiss that other, help that other, call that other family. In fact, because they are evil, they even call that other their neighbor to a greater degree than all others.
If that's really the way that you stratify everything, because everybody's doing it. Everybody's doing these stratifications, actually. But if that's how you stratify, then that person goes to that. You could get, I don't know, Gandhi or whoever you want to hold up as an example of just extraordinary goodness, and they would be of less importance than this person because the flattery. This person's really got the flattery
really
turned up to 10.
Person. Right.
That's what I love. That's what I mean.
Right. Anyone else they regard as a neighbor only so far as the person loves them. So what
I'm looking for in other people is people who love me. Yeah,
yes,
that's right.
So the neighbor meaning who is it that I love and help? Right. And you look around, and you see it's a self-focused thing. So everybody, what do they think of me? How do they do what I want? Do they say what I want them to say?
Yep.
The more they do that, the more I like them. Yep. That's it.
That's the degree of the neighbor.
And then what we're contrasting this with is instead of self being the focused, it's goodness that's being the focused. So you look out at everyone if you're in a state of neighborly love, and you look out and see like how much does it seem like of the Lord's goodness, or you can just say goodness because it's the same thing. Goodness does this person have in them, and that's who I like. So how they define their neighbor depends on the type and amount of love they have. People like this see the neighbor in relation to themselves because the type of love one has determines who is considered one's neighbor. Get it? That makes sense to me.
It makes sense.
What love you have in yourself colors who you see as your neighbor.
And I think perhaps what he's saying is that this can help you to, I don't want to use the word diagnose or whatever, but categorize. I mean, he's talking about categories, right? He's talking about figuring out who we treat this way, who we treat that way, or what would be helpful to people, seeing what they value in other people. It's complicated, but that's a cool way to try to assess as best we can. We don't know. We don't see into people's hearts. Swedenborg is very clear that only the Lord can judge. Mm-hmm. In the book of Revelation, I don't know why I keep going back to that, but the reason it says the Lamb is the only one who can open all those seals on the book is that only the Lord knows the human heart. Only the Lord can look into every single soul and know exactly who we are. We don't know who each other are. We can be vastly wrong about, sometimes when people are being the most principled, they will be being accused of massive selfishness.
And why do you want to know how much goodness people have? Because that changes the way in which you help them.
Yeah.
It changes the way in which you help them. So that's great intel to try to figure out what's going on with people, because that changes the way that you try to help. You remember, you're a helping machine.
Yep.
With every, you get eventually to the point where with everyone you have contact with, you're trying to be helpful in whatever way. That'd be, could be too exhausting to try to have that switch on all the time. But in general, sometimes reflect. And so like, how can I be helpful in these situations? So you're looking to what's going on with that person, because then I know how I can be helpful.
Yes, and it's not about how can I tell myself I'm a helpful person. It's
how can I try? Yeah, how can I try?
How can I actually impact that person for their good? How can
or impact society? Like a lot of the way you be charitable and helpful, according to Swedenborg, is to do your occupation or your duties well.
Do your job well.
It's not like you just kind of get this random day-to-day, is there a puppy over there that needs to cross the road? Okay, because then you're not specialized. Really the greatest help you're going to do is through what you're training in.
The work you do.
The work you do. Right. Okay. So let's look at the opposite. So we have the contrasting opposites here.
I'm dying to hear this.
Okay,
opposite.
so the people who are self-focused, that's how they see neighbor. On the other hand, people who do not love themselves more than others, and this is true of everyone in the Lord's kingdom, will trace the origin of the neighbor to the one they ought to love above all, the Lord. People who love others as they love themselves, then, and especially people who love others more than themselves, as angels do. That's a good trick. All view the Lord as the origin of the neighbor. They see it this way because the Lord himself is present in what is good, since goodness issues from him. This too shows that the nature of the love determines who is one's neighbor. In Matthew 25:34-40, the Lord himself teaches that he is present in what is good. After all, addressing people governed by goodness, he says that they gave him something to eat, gave him a drink, gathered him in, dressed him, visited him, and came to him in prison. Then he says that so far as they did that for one of his least consequential brothers and sisters, they did it for him. Okay.
That does make a tie, and that's so shocking with that story, because people say, well, when did I never visited you in prison or whatever. And he said, oh, you did it for somebody else, and I was in that.
That's interesting, because you think of when we first heard of the Lord is in goodness, you think of in the act of doing goodness, the Lord's there. But there's like the act of receiving goodness, the Lord's in that.
Yes.
He seems to be saying, you did this for
this for me.
Did it for, like, maybe on behalf of him or to me. I have to look at the exact language there, but
right.
Okay.
Yeah, you did it to me, isn't it? Yeah, unto me in the old translation.
I think it's worth pointing out, like, so people sometimes will get confused because Swedenborg will say, you got to love the Lord above all, and then like Jesus says, love the Lord above all, love the neighbor as yourself. But Swedenborg will talk about love of the Lord and love of the neighbor, and there's these two kinds of love, and you got to have love of the Lord is highest, but the definition he gives of what does it mean to love the Lord is different than what you'd think, which at one point he says, loving the Lord is not loving the God for the image he projects.
That's right.
But loving the goodness that comes from him. So to love the Lord above all is to love goodness above all, because why do you love the Lord? Because the Lord is trying to bring goodness to everyone.
It's that quality of goodness.
Because of who he is.
As we've said before, if some of the way that biblical stories are understood portrays God as vengeful or nasty or petty or whatever it is, not very lovable, because
Right.
not good. Those are not good traits.
Right.
So really, it is the goodness that you love. That certainly is what chokes me up. It's the goodness that chokes me up.
And there's people who don't believe that there is a God, who still, when they see goodness, like everybody knows, like, oh, goodness is great. Like everybody can be moved by goodness. It just, I would think what the insight Swedenborg is giving is like, by the way, that is God you're seeing. Even though,
Yes.
even though you can't always intuit that.
Yeah. Like that in the epistles that God is love, and those who know love know God because God is love.
Yeah. You hear that all the time.
Right.
God is love.
Right.
What are you talking about?
Right. No, but that's for real. Yeah. When you see, which from the example of the Good Samaritan, you see the most unlikely person, somebody who you thought, oh, well, that whole category of people, they're just nasty, they're self-centered, they're, so external or worldly or, self-obsessed or something like that. And when you see them being so nice to somebody else, you think, oh, yeah, there's that quality.
This discussion now shows where religious people ought to look to determine how much someone is their neighbor. That the closer another is to the Lord, the more that person is our neighbor. And that since the Lord is present in charitable goodness, others are our neighbor according to the quality of their goodness, and consequently according to the quality of their neighborly love.
Their neighborly love. So our neighborly love should be according to other people's. We should notice their neighborly love, what their neighborly love is like, and adjust accordingly.
Well, because when he says the closer, look to determine how much is their neighbor, that the closer the closer another is to the Lord, the more that person is our neighbor. There we go. Yeah. So if you just stop there, you'd be like, well, okay, so people that are close to the Lord, what are they? Oh, well, it's like they're very religious. Very religious people are people who do a lot of rituals and have a lot of religious knowledge and identify as not necessarily, could be, but that's not the marker. The marker is how much charitable goodness do they have, because that's where you find the Lord.
The quality of the goodness.
I mean, come on.
Yeah, and elsewhere in Swedenborg's works, for people who really want to do a deep dive on this,
yes, we do.
He gets into how these terms that seem very negative in the Bible, but often you have these lists of the blind, the lame, the maimed, the widows, the orphans. They all seem to be sort of negatively characterized. Easy for me to say.
He alluded to that earlier when he said that they, what was this? He didn't go into it here.
Kind of quickly, didn't he?
But the ancients divided the neighbor into categories and named the categories after those people who seemed more in need of aid than others.
That's right. That's what he's talking about. And so biblically, you have a lot of those. So when it's talking about helping the poor or the thirsty or the hungry or the in prison or the sick and so on, apparently in the ancient times, those were the categories that they used only in a correspondential meaning.
Yes.
To say, oh, just like the plant app, this person's short on truth. Like they have a good heart, but they don't really understand what's going on. So I want to feed, I'll help them in that way. I'll give them something to drink.
Okay.
Yes. Whereas if somebody who has a lot of understanding but not much compassion, maybe I need to give them a meal, give them some food.
Because this is going to be magnificently confusing for people who aren't familiar with correspondences. So
that's what we specialize in.
Yeah. What we're trying to say is that people in ancient times, according to Swedenborg, and we can still do it here because these categories still exist.
Yeah.
They would look out at the physical maladies that people have. So like blindness.
Yep.
And even things like being orphans, widows, in prison, sick. So they would look out at those categories of physical and say, those are correspondences. So we're going to then keep the names of those categories, but then look for the spiritual equivalent of that.
And realizing that, oh, this person who seems perfectly healthy actually has a spiritual sickness of some kind,
Yes.
or this person who seems this way or that. In other words, it wouldn't necessarily be their physical condition. Maybe they've got a huge family, but there's something about them that's orphaned, and that,
It's just borrowing the correspondential terminology to label states of life in people. So this is regardless of what your external state is. It's like you had a doctor come, or a social worker, and look at what's the state of your life. Now you have a spiritual doctor who's coming and looking at the state of your external life. Now you have a spiritual doctor who's coming and looking at the state of your internal life, and they can say, or like, let's say you were talking to someone about someone you love, and you'd be like, that person is in prison. Even though they're not in prison, but in their mind they are. And
yes.
When he talks about those categories, I don't have them all offhand, but I believe that in prison has to do with they're trapped by false ideas.
Yeah, I think so.
Then they're sick is that they're involved in evil.
Right.
Evil is running some evil behaviors are running their life. There's like the bound, which one of them is, it's people who are in evil and falsity, but know they are and want to get out. That's different than if you're sick and you don't know you are, and you don't want to get out. And
a lot of the thirsty and hungry are people who long for these things, but they don't have them yet, or don't know how to connect with those.
Thirsty is longing for truth.
That's right.
And hungry is longing for goodness. So if you can identify, that person, if they're hungry, like they need goodness and they need love, and you come at them and try to teach them a bunch of, let's say in my case, it'd be a bunch of Swedenborg stuff, it's not addressing their need. But if they're thirsty, and you get some people who will be searching YouTube, and they're looking for, I want some ideas about this stuff. And so a show full of ideas is like exactly what they need. Whereas somebody who's hungry, I don't know exactly what it is to long for good. Maybe it's, they need comforting, they need service, I don't know. Yeah. Or maybe it's that they need to be able to do good in there. I'm not sure exactly. But those are the different categories of the need that people have, the spiritual needs that people have.
Swedenborg has a lot to say about these categories, but I still think we, the human race, we need to do a lot of work with these things to resurrect this ancient knowledge. Because what I don't know off the top of my head is how you figure that out. But that's what their study would be. How do you know? What is the difference between, how can you tell somebody's thirsty rather than hungry in this spiritual sense,
Yeah.
Or how do you figure out, is it imprisoned or is it sick, or is it widowed or orphan? How did they figure that out? And then what did they do exactly to try to address those things? That was this ancient wisdom. That was the chief thing that they would work on all the time and talk to each other about and figure, in this circumstance, I did this, and that really seemed to help. This wasn't so good because I think actually I misread it at first. I thought they were this, but they were in the other category. And
I wonder, it's just occurring to me now. It could be that knowledge is making its comeback, one part of its comeback in the really sort of birth and progression post-Swedenborg of the idea of psychological health, or
absolutely
mental health, or it's even sociology and studying what's a good life for people. We're able to more effectively label, mental things.
Psychology is amazing when you think about it, to say, I think you're trapped in this type of, you have some loop that goes on around this or that.
I would...
and try to figure out how to address that in effective ways.
Exactly. So, and I wonder if there's some kind of pinnacle that can reach where there's an effective collaboration of spiritual and religious things with psychological things.
Yes.
So there's a lot of ways that can be done wrong, but I do. We were just in a recent show. We had Robert Falconer.
That's right.
Who was saying that basically, like, the kind of therapy that he's doing, you can't get too far in the human mind without realizing that there's spiritual healing, or there's spiritual component to it.
That's right.
So
healing's not really effective if you don't have that spiritual piece.
And I think either divorced from the other. Like I'm so steeped in Swedenborg. Like, I've got plenty of that all around. But there's been stuff like cognitive behavioral therapy and antidepressants, and it's been so helpful to me.
The healing of trauma, just amazing people are doing amazing things in these fields.
And I wonder if we could really have a full suite of services for the neighbor. It would be like if you can find the right balance of when does somebody need secular psychological help, when does there need to be some spirituality into it, when do they need spirituality in religion, because there is a lot of studies about the psychological benefits of belonging to a religious community.
That's right.
So I'm just saying that might be it making its comeback.
That's cool. I like that idea, because it's definitely in common in all these different kinds of modalities, or whatever you'd call them, different therapies. Isn't there always behind all of them? Like I love Bessel van der Kolk's book, The Body Keeps the Score, because there's this wonderful sense in there of just I'll do anything, is it pet therapy? Is it, what is walks in the woods, or it's, there's any different kind of thing that will help people with trauma. Let's just find what it is. Let's find what works and do it.
So if you step back and look at the entire human race, so everybody's there, they've all got their own mind and their own state of life. And the point of existence is for people to be in the state of life where God is leading them deeper and deeper into heaven and the happiness that comes from it. So in a way, that's the neighbor project with everyone. It's what's impeding you from getting into that heaven state? And how do we get you there? And if you could build this ultimate tool, what it would do is it'd be able to diagnose you. And it could be some people, it's just that they need to, get a little more structure in their life and apply themselves to something, work a little harder. Some people need to be less selfish. Some people are debilitated by let's say a mental health condition and some people are debilitated by a physical health condition that's distracting them. And so they need to get that fixed before they can get into that state.
That's right.
Some people lack religious truth. Some people are probably even a little too immersed in spiritual ideas and need to go practice. So,
do more whittling, or
people probably have a
something.
Combination of a lot of those things. How do you get it so you're in the state where God is leading you most effectively?
And it strikes me that what you're saying is exactly what there's a whole class of angels that just works with people after they've died to bring them to heaven, quote unquote.
Right.
Well, surely what you're describing is exactly what they're doing. They're doing this type of assessment. Swedenborg says explicitly that they do these assessments. They can tell what you love and what you've been through and so on just by looking at you. So surely what they're doing is going, okay, I can see you're strong in this area. This is almost a little overblown. We could dial that back a little bit. Mm-hmm. Let's increase this, so let's get you being more physically active, not thinking so much, or, whatever it is. And they've got their recipe, but it's going to be a very different recipe for this other person. And they're processing people because their greatest love, Swedenborg says, is to bring people to heaven, which is that state of goodness and love, to help their neighbor love, bring them to that state.
Totally. Well, that's the big project. That's the project of all projects. And I guess what I find in Swedenborg is you get things that I think are remedies to different human conditions. And even what we came across today, which was perspective shift. It's like a spiritual cognitive behavioral therapy. Shift your perspective from instead of thinking about how do I make life turn out well for me, to so I am here to help. What do I do to help? That there could be, and I think you can even make the case just from secular studies and things that's a really helpful, that's a really beneficial way to be. But that's in there, and that it links up to that because this is how God is, and I think there's a power in that. Religion has a power for people.
Yes.
So anyway, I'm excited about the idea of Swedenborg's writing is continuing to be, well, here's different, whichever category the neighbor you are, whatever you need, there's some concepts from here that might be of great impact for you. So that's why we do this show that we do. And this one is wrapping up now. Thanks, Jonathan, for a great insight and fun conversation.
That was awesome.
Thanks, everybody, for watching. Thanks to our channel members for supporting us. If you're not one yet, hit that join button down there. You can sign up for exclusive after the show content that we're about to go shoot right now. Hopefully you got some ideas from this that are going to translate into you going out there and seeing who the neighbor is, understanding what the point of life is, and having a more and more heavenly experience. Thanks for watching.